In Norse mythology, Thor/Theta/, from Old Norse rr, is a hammer-wielding god associated with thunder, lightning, storms, oak trees, strength, the protection of mankind, and also hallowing, healing and fertility. The cognate deity in wider Germanic mythology and paganism was known in Old English as Unnar and in Old High German as Donar, runic onar, stemming from a Common Germanic *Unraz, meaning thunder. Ultimately stemming from Proto-Indo-European religion, Thor is a prominently mentioned god throughout the recorded history of the Germanic peoples, from the Roman occupation of regions of Germania, to the tribal expansions of the migration period, to his high popularity during the Viking Age, when, in the face of the process of the Christianization of Scandinavia, emblems of his hammer, Mjölnir, were worn in defiance, and Norse pagan personal names containing the name of the god bear witness to his popularity. Into the modern period, Thor continued to be acknowledged in rural folklore throughout Germanic regions. Thor is frequently referred to in place names: the day of the week Thursday, Thor's Day, Old English Thunresdæg, Thunor, German Donnerstag, Donnerstag, Dutch donderdag, bears his name, and names stemming from the pagan period containing his own continue to be used today. In Norse mythology, largely recorded in Iceland from traditional material stemming from Scandinavia, numerous tales and information about Thor are provided. In these sources, Thor bears at least 14 names, is the husband of the golden-haired goddess Sif, is the lover of the Jotun Jarnsaxa, and is generally described as fierce-eyed, red-haired and red-bearded. With Sif, Thor fathered the goddess, and possible Valkyrie, RR, with Jarnsaxa, he fathered Magni, with a mother whose name is not recorded, he fathered me, and he is the stepfather of the god Ullr. The same sources list Thor as the son of the god Odin and the personified earth, Fjordjin, and by way of Odin, Thor has numerous brothers. Thor has two servants, Jælfi and Roskva, rides in a cart or chariot pulled by two goats, Tad and Grisnir, and Tangjostr, that he eats and resurrects, and is ascribed three dwellings, Bilskirnir, Reimr, and Ravangr. Thor wields the mountain-crushing hammer, Mjölnir, wears the belt Megingjair and the iron gloves Jarngripar, and owns the staff Grarfloer. Thor's exploits, including his relentless slaughter of his foes and fierce battles with the monstrous serpent Hormungandr and their foretold mutual deaths during the events of Ragnarok, are recorded throughout sources for Norse mythology. Thor has inspired numerous works of art, and references to Thor appear in modern popular culture. Like other Germanic deities, veneration of Thor is revived in the modern period in Heat Henry. Old Norse rr, Old English Unnar, Old High German Donar, Old Saxon Thunor, and Old Frisian Thunor are cognates within the Germanic language branch, descending from the Proto-Germanic masculine noun *unraz thunder. The name of the god is the origin of the weekday name Thursday. By employing a practice known as Interpretatio Germanica during the Roman Empire period, the Germanic peoples adopted the Roman weekly calendar, and replaced the names of Roman gods with their own. Latin dies Iovis, Day of Jupiter, was converted into Proto-Germanic *Donnerstag as Thor's Day, from which stems modern English Thursday and all other Germanic weekday cognates. Beginning in the Viking Age, personal names containing the theonym Thor are recorded with great frequency. Prior to the Viking Age, no examples are recorded. Thor-based names may have flourished during the Viking Age as a defiant response to attempts at Christianization, similar to the wide-scale Viking Age practice of wearing Thor's hammer pendants. The earliest records of the Germanic peoples were recorded by the Romans, and in these works Thor is frequently referred to via a process known as Interpretatio Romana, where characteristics perceived to be similar by Romans result in identification of a non-Roman god as a Roman deity, as either the Roman god Jupiter, also known as Jove, or the Greco-Roman god Hercules. The first clear example of this occurs in the Roman historian Tacitus's late 1st century work Germania, where, writing about the religion of the Suebi, a confederation of Germanic peoples, he comments that among the gods Mercury is the one they principally worship. They regard it as a religious duty to offer to him, on fixed days, human as well as other sacrificial victims. Hercules and Mars they appease by animal offerings of the permitted kind, and adds that a portion of the Suebi also venerate Isis. In this instance, Tacitus refers to the god Odin as Mercury, Thor as Hercules, and the god Tyr as Mars, and the identity of the Isis of the Suebi has been debated. In Thor's case, the identification with the god Hercules is likely at least in part due to similarities between Thor's hammer and Hercules' club 6 in his annals. Tacitus again refers to the veneration of Hercules by the Germanic peoples. He records a wood beyond the river Weser, in what is now northwestern Germany, as dedicated to him. In Germanic areas occupied by the Roman Empire, coins and votive objects dating from the 2nd and 3rd century AD have been found with Latin inscriptions referring to Hercules, and so in reality, with varying levels of likelihood, refer to Thor by way of Interpretatio Romana. Post-Roman era. The first recorded instance of the name of the god appears in the Migration period, where a piece of jewelry, a fibula, the Nordender fibula, dating from the 7th century AD and found in Bavaria, bears an Elder Futhark inscription that contains the name Donar, i.e. Donner, the southern Germanic form of the god's name. According to a near-contemporary account, the Christian missionary Saint Boniface felled an oak tree dedicated to Jove in the 8th century, the Donner oak in the region of Hesse, Germany. Around the second half of the 8th century, Old English mentions of a figure named Thunor, Unner, are recorded, a figure who likely refers to an Old English version of the god. In relation, Thunor is sometimes used in Old English texts to gloss Jupiter. The god may be referenced in the poem Solomon and Saturn, where the thunder strikes the devil with a fiery axe, and the Old English expression Anorad, thunder ride, may refer to the god's thunderous, goat-led chariot. A 9th century AD codex from Mainz, Germany, known as the Old Saxon baptismal vow records the name of 3 Old Saxon gods, Uodin, Old Saxon Woden, Saxnote, and Thunor, by way of their renunciation as demons in a formula to be repeated by Germanic pagans formally converting to Christianity. The Kentish royal legend, probably 11th century, contains the story of a villainous reeve of Ecgberheit of Kent called Thunor, who is swallowed up by the earth at a place from then on known as ᚦ᚟ᚾᚨᚚ, Old English Thunur's mound. Gabriel Terville Petter saw this as an invented origin for the place name, demonstrating loss of memory that Thunor had been a god's name. In the 11th century, chronicler Adam of Bremen records in his Gesta Hammaburgensis Ecclesiae Pontificum that a statue of Thor, who Adam describes as mightiest, sits in the temple at Uppsala in the center of a triple throne, flanked by Woden and Fricko, located in Gamla Uppsala, Sweden. Adam details that Thor, they reckon, rules the sky. He governs thunder and lightning, winds and storms, fine weather and fertility, and that Thor, with his mace, looks like Jupiter. Adam details that the people of Uppsala had appointed priests to each of the gods, and that the priests were to offer up sacrifices. In Thor's case, he continues, these sacrifices were done when plague or famine threatened. Earlier in the same work, Adam relays that in 1030 an English preacher, Wulfred, was lynched by assembled Germanic pagans for profaning a representation of Thor. 2 objects with runic inscriptions invoking Thor date from the 11th century, one from England and one from Sweden. The first, the Canterbury charm from Canterbury, England, calls upon Thor to heal a wound by banishing a Thursday. The second, the Kvinnaby amulet, invokes protection by both Thor and his hammer. Post-Viking Age. In the 12th century, more than a century after Norway was officially Christianized, Thor was still being invoked by the population, as evidenced by a stick bearing a runic message found among the Briggen inscriptions in Bergen, Norway. On the stick, both Thor and Odin are called upon for help. Thor is asked to receive the reader, and Odin to own them. Also around the 12th century, iconography of the Christianizing 11th century King Olaf II of Norway absorbed elements of the native Thor. Olaf II had become a familiarly red-bearded, hammer-wielding figure. Poetic Edda. Afterwards, says the Volva, the sky will turn black before fire engulfs the world, the stars will disappear, flames will dance before the sky, steam will rise, the world will be covered in water and then it will be raised again, green and fertile. See Prose Edda section below for the survival of the sons of Thor, who return after these events with Thor's hammer. In the poem Grimnismal, the god Odin, in disguise as Grimnir, and tortured, starved and thirsty, imparts in the young Agnar cosmological lore, including that Thor resides in Reimr, and that, Every day, Thor wades through the rivers Kormd and Ormd, and the two Kurlager. There, Grimnir says, Thor sits as judge at the immense cosmological world tree, Yggdrasil. In Skirnismal, the god Freyr's messenger, Skirnir, threatens the fair Geir, who Freyr is smitten with numerous threats and curses, including that Thor, Freyr, and Odin will be angry with her, and that she risks their potent wrath. Thor is the main character of Herbarslój, where, after traveling from the east, he comes to an inlet where he encounters a ferryman who gives his name as Herbar, Odin, again in disguise, and attempts to hail a ride from him. The ferryman, shouting from the inlet, is immediately rude and obnoxious to Thor and refuses to ferry him. At first, Thor holds his tongue, but Herbar only becomes more aggressive, and the poem soon becomes a fighting match between Thor and Herbar, all the while revealing lore about the two, including Thor's killing of several Jotnar in the east and berserk women on Hliese, now the Danish island of Ls. In the end, Thor ends up walking instead. Thor is again the main character in the poem Hymiskvia, where, after the gods have been hunting and have eaten their prey, they have an urge to drink. They shake the twigs and interpret what they say. The gods decide that they would find suitable cauldrons at Agir's home. Thor arrives at Agir's home and finds him to be cheerful, looks into his eyes, and tells him that he must prepare feasts for the gods. Annoyed, Agir tells Thor that the gods must first bring to him a suitable cauldron to brew ale in. The gods search but find no such cauldron anywhere. However, Tyr tells Thor that he may have a solution. East of Ilivigar lives Hymir, and he owns such a deep kettle. So, after Thor secures his goats at Egil's home, Thor and Tyr go to Hymir's hall in search of a cauldron large enough to brew ale for them all. They arrive, and Tyr sees his 900-headed grandmother and his gold-clad mother, the latter of which welcomes them with a horn. After Hymir, who is not happy to see Thor, comes in from the cold outdoors, Tyr's mother helps them find a properly strong cauldron. Thor eats a big meal of 2 oxen, all the rest eat but one, and then goes to sleep. In the morning, he awakes and informs Hymir that he wants to go fishing the following evening, and that he will catch plenty of food, but that he needs bait. Hymir tells him to go get some bait from his pasture, which he expects should not be a problem for Thor. Thor goes out, finds Hymir's best ox, and rips its head off. After a lacuna in the manuscript of the poem, Hymiskvia abruptly picks up again with Thor and Hymir in a boat, out at sea. Hymir catches a few whales at once, and Thor baits his line with the head of the ox. Thor casts his line and the monstrous serpent Jormungandr bites. Thor pulls the serpent on board, and violently slams him in the head with his hammer. Jormungandr shrieks, and a noisy commotion is heard from underwater before another lacuna appears in the manuscript. After the second lacuna, Hymir is sitting in the boat, unhappy and totally silent, as they row back to shore. On shore, Hymir suggests that Thor should help him carry a whale back to his farm. Thor picks both the boat and the whales up, and carries it all back to Hymir's farm. After Thor successfully smashes a crystal goblet by throwing it at Hymir's head on Tyr's mother's suggestion, Thor and Tyr are given the cauldron. Tyr cannot lift it, but Thor manages to roll it, and so with it they leave. Some distance from Hymir's home, an army of many-headed beings led by Hymir attacks the two, but are killed by the hammer of Thor. Although one of his goats is lame in the leg, the two manage to bring the cauldron back, have plenty of ale, and so, from then on, return to Agir's for more every winter. In the poem Loka's Enna, the half-god Loki angrily flyts with the gods in the sea entity Agir's hall. Thor does not attend the event, however, as he is away in the east for unspecified purposes. Towards the end of the poem, the flyting turns to Sif, Thor's wife, whom Loki then claims to have slept with. The god Freyr's servant Bela interjects, and says that, since all of the mountains are shaking, she thinks that Thor is on his way home. Bela adds that Thor will bring peace to the quarrel, to which Loki responds with insults. Thor arrives and tells Loki to be silent, and threatens to rip Loki's head from his body with his hammer. Loki asks Thor why he is so angry, and comments that Thor will not be so daring to fight the wolf, Fenrir, when it eats Odin, a reference to the foretold events of Ragnarok. Thor again tells him to be silent, and threatens to throw him into the sky, where he will never be seen again. Loki says that Thor should not brag of his time in the east, as he once crouched in fear in the thumb of a glove, a story involving deception by the magic of Loki, recounted in the Prose Edda book Gylfaginning, which, he comments, was hardly like Thor. Thor again tells him to be silent, threatening to break every bone in Loki's body. Loki responds that he intends to live a while yet, and again insults Thor with references to his encounter with Loki. Thor responds with a fourth call to be silent, and threatens to send Loki to hell. At Thor's final threat, Loki gives in, commenting that only for Thor will he leave the hall, for I know alone that you do strike, and the poem continues 33. Ah, what a lovely maid it is! 1902, by Elmer Boyd Smith, Thor is unhappily dressed by the goddess Freyja and her attendants as herself. In the comedic poem Rimskvia, Thor again plays a central role. In the poem, Thor wakes and finds that his powerful hammer, Mjölnir, is missing. Thor turns to Loki, and tells him that nobody knows that the hammer has been stolen. The two go to the dwelling of the goddess Freyja, and so that he may attempt to find Mjölnir, Thor asks her if he may borrow her feather cloak. Freyja agrees, and says she would lend it to Thor even if it were made of silver or gold, and Loki flies off, the feather cloak whistling. In Jotunheimr, the Jotun Rymr sits on a barrow, plaiting golden collars for his female dogs, and trimming the manes of his horses. Rymr sees Loki, and asks what could be amiss among the Aesir and the elves, why is Loki alone in Jotunheimr? Loki responds that he has bad news for both the elves and the Aesir, that Thor's hammer, Mjölnir, is gone. Rymr says that he has hidden Mjölnir 8 leagues beneath the earth, from which it will be retrieved, but only if Freyja is brought to him as his wife. Loki flies off, the feather cloak whistling, away from Jotunheimr and back to the court of the gods. Thor asks Loki if his efforts were successful, and that Loki should tell him while he is still in the air, as tales often escape a sitting man, and the man lying down often barks out lies. Loki states that it was indeed an effort, and also a success, for he has discovered that Rymr has the hammer, but that it cannot be retrieved unless Freyja is brought to Rymr as his wife. The two return to Freyja and tell her to put on a bridal head dress, as they will drive her to Jotunheimr. Freyja, indignant and angry, goes into a rage, causing all of the halls of the Aesir to tremble in her anger, and her necklace, the famed Brisingamen, falls from her. Freyja pointedly refuses. As a result, the gods and goddesses meet and hold a thing to discuss and debate the matter. At the thing, the god Heimdallr puts forth the suggestion that, in place of Freyja, Thor should be dressed as the bride, complete with jewels, women's clothing down to his knees, a bridal head dress, and the necklace Brisingamen. Thor rejects the idea, yet Loki interjects that this will be the only way to get back Mjölnir. Loki points out that, without Mjölnir, the Jotnar will be able to invade and settle in Asgard. The gods dress Thor as a bride, and Loki states that he will go with Thor as his maid, and that the two shall drive to Jotunheimr together. After riding together in Thor's goat-driven chariot, the two, disguised, arrive in Jotunheimr. Rymr commands the Jotnar in his hall to spread straw on the benches, for Freyja has arrived to be his wife. Rymr recounts his treasured animals and objects, stating that Freyja was all that he was missing in his wealth. Early in the evening, the disguised Loki and Thor meet with Rymr and the assembled Jotnar. Thor eats and drinks ferociously, consuming entire animals and 3 casks of mead. Rymr finds the behavior at odds with his impression of Freyja, and Loki, sitting before Rymr and appearing as a very shrewd maid, makes the excuse that Freyja's behavior is due to her having not consumed anything for 8 entire days before arriving, due to her eagerness to arrive. Rymr then lifts Freyja's veil and wants to kiss her. Terrifying eyes stare back at him, seemingly burning with fire. Loki says that this is because Freyja has not slept for 8 nights in her eagerness. The wretched sister of the Jotnar appears, asks for a bridal gift from Freyja, and the Jotnar bring out Mjölnir to sanctify the bride, to lay it on her lap, and marry the two by the hand of the goddess Þór. Thor laughs internally when he sees the hammer, takes hold of it, strikes Rymr, beats all of the Jotnar, kills their older sister, and so gets his hammer back. In the poem Alvismal, Thor tricks a dwarf, Alvis, to his doom upon finding that he seeks to wed his daughter, unnamed, possibly RR. As the poem starts, Thor meets a dwarf who talks about getting married. Thor finds the dwarf repulsive and, apparently, realizes that the bride is his daughter. Thor comments that the wedding agreement was made among the gods while Thor was gone, and that the dwarf must seek his consent. To do so, Thor says, Alvis must tell him what he wants to know about all of the worlds that the dwarf has visited. In a long question and answer session, Alvis does exactly that. He describes natural features as they are known in the languages of various races of beings in the world, and gives an amount of cosmological lore. However, the question and answer session turns out to be a ploy by Thor, as, although Thor comments that he has truly never seen anyone with more wisdom in their breast, Thor has managed to delay the dwarf enough for the sun to turn him to stone. Day dawns on you now, dwarf, now sun shines on the hall. In the poem Hyndlulge, Freyja offers to the Jotun woman Hyndla to blot, sacrifice, to Thor so that she may be protected, and comments that Thor does not care much for Jotun women. Prose Edda, Heimskringla, and Sagas. In the prologue to his Prose Edda, Snorri Sturluson euhemerizes Thor as a prince of Troy, and the son of King Memnon by Troanna, a daughter of Priam. Thor, also known as Thor, is said to have married the prophetess Sibyl, identified with Sif. Thor is further said here to have been raised in Thrace by a chieftain named Loricus, whom he later slew to assume the title of King of Thrace, to have had hair fairer than gold, and to have been strong enough to lift 10 bear skins. The name of the Aesir is explained as men from Asia, Asgard being the Asian city, i.e., Troy. Alternatively, Troy is in Tyrkland, Turkey, i.e., Asia Minor, and Asialand is Scythia, where Thor founded a new city named Asgard. Odin is a remote descendant of Thor, removed by 12 generations, who led an expedition across Germany, Denmark, and Sweden to Norway. In the Prose Edda, Thor is mentioned in all 4 books, Prologue, Gylfaginning, Skaldskaparmal, and Hadidal. In Heimskringla, composed in the 13th century by Snorri Sturluson, Thor, or statues of Thor are mentioned in Ynglinga Saga, Hakonar Sagaga, Olaf's Saga Tryggvasonar, and Olaf's Saga Helga. In Ynglinga Saga chapter 5, a heavily euhemerized account of the gods is provided, where Thor is described as having been a Gothi, a pagan priest who was given by Odin, who himself is explained away as having been an exceedingly powerful magic-wielding chieftain from the east, a dwelling in the mythical location of Ravangr, in what is now Sweden. The saga narrative adds that numerous names at the time of the narrative, popularly in use, were derived from Thor. Modern folklore. Tales about Thor, or influenced by native traditions regarding Thor, continued into the modern period, particularly in Scandinavia. Writing in the 19th century, scholar Jacob Grimm records various phrases surviving into Germanic languages that refer to the god, such as the Norwegian Thorsvarm, Thor's warmth, for lightning, and the Swedish Gajubben afar, the good old fellow, is taking a ride, as well as the word Torden, Thor's rumble or Thor's thunder, when it thunders. Grimm comments that, at times, Scandinavians often no longer liked to utter the god's real name, or they wished to extol his fatherly goodness. Thor remained pictured as a red-bearded figure, as evidenced by the Danish rhyme that yet referred to him as Thor med sitt langska egg, Thor with the long beard, and the Frisian curse dies rua diiret Donar regier. Let red-haired thunder see to that. A Scandinavian folk belief that lightning frightens away trolls and Jotnar appears in numerous Scandinavian folk tales, and may be a late reflection of Thor's role in fighting such beings. In connection, the lack of trolls and ettins in modern Scandinavia is explained as a result of the accuracy and efficiency of the lightning strokes. On 4, or possibly 5, rune stones, an invocation to Thor appears that reads "May Thor hallow these runes / this monument." The invocation appears thrice in Denmark, Dr 110, Dr 209, and Dr 220, and a single time in Västergötland, VG 150, Sweden. A fifth appearance may possibly occur on a runestone found in Södermanland, Sweden, So 140, but the reading is contested. Pictorial representations of Thor's hammer also appear on a total of 5 runestones found in Denmark and in the Swedish counties of Västergötland and Södermanland. 3 stones depict Thor fishing for the serpent Jormungandr, the Hirdum stone in Thy, Denmark, the Altuna runestone in Altuna, Sweden, one of the Ardra image stones, stone 7, from Gotland, Sweden, and the Gosforth cross in Gosforth, England. Pendants in a distinctive shape representing the hammer of Thor, known in Norse sources as Mjölnir, have frequently been unearthed in Viking Age Scandinavian burials. The hammers were worn as a symbol of Norse pagan faith and as a symbol of opposition to Christianization, a response to crosses worn by Christians. Casting molds have been found for the production of both Thor's hammers and Christian crucifixes, and at least one example of a combined crucifix and hammer has been discovered. 47 The Eyrarland statue, a copper alloy figure found near Akureyri, Iceland dating from around the 11th century, may depict Thor seated and gripping his hammer. The swastika symbol has been identified as representing the hammer or lightning of Thor. 49 Scholar Hilda Ellis Davidson, 1965, comments on the usage of the swastika as a symbol of Thor. The protective sign of the hammer was worn by women, as we know from the fact that it has been found in women's graves. It seems to have been used by the warrior also, in the form of the swastika. Primarily it appears to have had connections with light and fire, and to have been linked with the sun wheel. It may have been on account of Thor's association with lightning that this sign was used as an alternative to the hammer, for it is found on memorial stones in Scandinavia besides inscriptions to Thor. When we find it on the pommel of a warrior's sword and on his sword belt, the assumption is that the warrior was placing himself under the thunder god's protection. Swastikas appear on various Germanic objects stretching from the migration period to the Viking Age, such as the 3rd century VRLSE fibula, DRM 85, 123, from Zealand, Denmark, the Gothic spearhead from Brest-Litovsk, Belarus, numerous migration period bracteates, cremation urns from early Anglo-Saxon England, the 8th century SB sword from Son, Norway, and the 9th century Snoldelef stone, DR 248, from Rams, Denmark. Numerous place names in Scandinavia contain the Old Norse name rr. The identification of these place names as pointing to religious significance is complicated by the aforementioned common usage of rr as a personal name element. Cultic significance may only be assured in place names containing the elements ve, signifying the location of a ve, a type of pagan Germanic shrine, hof, a structure used for religious purposes, see heathen hofs, and lundr, a holy grove. The place name Arslundr is recorded with particular frequency in Denmark, and has direct cognates in Norse settlements in Ireland, such as Coil Tomer, whereas Arshof appears particularly often in southern Norway. Torso, Thor's Island, appears on the Swedish west coast. Thor also appears in many place names in Uppland. In English place names, Old English Thunor, in contrast with the Old Norse form of the name, later introduced to the Danelaw, left comparatively few traces. Examples include Thunderslee, from *Thunor's Hleu and Thursday Stable, Old English Thunur's Pillar. 4 FM Stenton noted that such place names were apparently restricted to Saxon and Judish territory and not found in Anglian areas. In what is now Germany, locations named after Thor are sparsely recorded, but an amount of locations called Donnersberg, German Donner's Mountain, may derive their name from the deity Donar, the southern Germanic form of the god's name for. In as late as the 19th century in Iceland, a specific breed of fox was known as Holter, Thor of the Holt, likely due to the red coat of the breed. 52 In Sweden in the 19th century, smooth, wedge-shaped stones found in the earth were called Thorwigger, Thor's wedges, according to a folk belief that they were once hurled at a troll by the god Thor. Compare thunderstones. Similarly, meteorites may be considered memorials to Thor in folk tradition due to their sheer weight. On the Swedish island of Gotland, a species of beetle, Scarabaeus stercorarius, was named after the god, the Thorbagi. When the beetle is found turned upside down and one flips it over, Thor's favor may be gained. In other regions of Sweden the name of the beetle appears to have been demonized with Christianization, where the insect came to be known as Thordajevil or Thordifvel, both meaning Thor devil. Origin, theories, and interpretations. Thor closely resembles other Indo-European deities associated with the thunder, the Celtic Doranis, the Baltic Perknas, the Slavic Perun, and particularly the Hindu Indra, whose red hair and thunderbolt weapon the Vajra are obvious parallels. Scholars have compared Indra's slaying of Vritra with Thor's battle with Jormungandr. Although in the past it was suggested that Thor was an indigenous sky god or a Viking Age import into Scandinavia, these Indo-European parallels make him generally accepted today as ultimately derived from a Proto-Indo-European deity. In Georges Dumazil's trifunctional hypothesis of Indo-European religion, Thor represents the second function, that of strength. Dumazil notes that as a result of displacements, he does not lead armies. Most of the functions of Indra have been in effect taken over by Odin. Many scholars have noted the association of Thor with fertility, particularly in later folklore and in the reflex of him represented by the Sami Hora Gauls, good man Thor. For Dumazil, this is the preservation by peasants of only the side effect of the gods' atmospheric battles, the fertilizing rain. Others have emphasized Thor's close connection to humanity, in all its concerns. Scholar Hilda Ellis Davidson summarizes. The cult of Thor was linked up with men's habitation and possessions, and with well-being of the family and community. This included the fruitfulness of the fields, and Thor, although pictured primarily as a storm god in the myths, was also concerned with the fertility and preservation of the seasonal round. In our own times, little stone axes from the distant past have been used as fertility symbols and placed by the farmer in the holes made by the drill to receive the first seed of spring. Thor's marriage with Sif of the golden hair, about which we hear little in the myths, seems to be a memory of the ancient symbol of divine marriage between sky god and earth goddess, when he comes to earth in the thunderstorm and the storm brings the rain which makes the fields fertile. In this way Thor, as well as Odin, may be seen to continue the cult of the sky god which was known in the Bronze Age. In modern times, Thor continues to be referenced in popular culture. Starting with F. J. Klopstock's 1776 Ode to Thor, where UNDSIE, Thor has been the subject of various poems, including Adam Gottlob Erlenschläger's 1807 epic poem Thor's Ris til Jotunheim and, by the same author, 3 more poems, Ham-Aren Hence, Thor's Fiskeri, and Thor Bisger Himir, collected in his 1819 Nordenskudur, Thor's Trunk, 1859, by Wilhelm Hertz, the 1820 satirical poem Mythology eller Gudetvissen by J. M. Stjernstolp, Nordens Mythology eller Sinnbildsprog, 1832, by N. F. S. Grundtvig, the poem Harmon by Thor Thorold, Der Mythos von Thor, 1836, by Ludwig Uhland, Der Hammer Thors, 1915, by W. Schult v. Brull, Hans Friedrich Blunk's Herr Donner und die Bauern, published in Marchen und Sagen, 1937, and Die Heimholung des Hammers, 1977, by H. C. Artman 64. He also features in 2 works by Rudyard Kipling, Letters of Travel, 1892–1913 and Cold Iron in Rewards and Fairies. Artists have depicted Thor in painting and sculpture, including Henry Fuseli's 1780 painting Thor in Himir's Boot Beckamp feet die Midgard Schlange, H. E. Freund's 1822 statue Thor, B. E. Fogelberg's 1844 marble statue Thor, M. E. Winch's 1880 charcoal drawing Thor's Kampf mit den Riesen, K. Ehrenberg's 1883 drawing Odin, Thor und Magne, several illustrations by E. Doepler published in Wilhelm Raunis's 1901 Valhall, Thor, Thor und die Midgard Schlange, Thor den Hrungnir Beckamp Fend, Thor bei dem Riesen Rymals Brautverkleidet, Thor bei Himir, Thor bei Skrymir, Thor den Flusswimmer Durchwatend, J. C. Dolman's 1909 drawings Thor and the Mountain and Sif and Thor, G. Poppy's painting Thor, E. Potner's 1914 drawing Thorschatten, H. Natter's marble statue Thor, and U. Brember's 1977 illustrations to Die Heimholung des Hammers by H. C. Artman. Swedish chemist Jöns Jacob Berzelius, 1779, 1848, discovered a chemical element that he named after Thor, thorium. In 1962, American comic book writer Stan Lee and his brother Larry Lieber, together with Jack Kirby, created the Marvel Comics superhero Thor, which they based on the god of the same name 66 portrayed by Australian actor Chris Hemsworth. This character stars in the Marvel Studios films Thor, 2011, The Avengers, 2012, Thor, The Dark World, 2013, and Avengers, Age of Ultron, 2015, and the upcoming Thor, Ragnarok, 2017. First described in 2013, Thor's hero shrew, ᚤ᚟ᚾᚨᚱ thori, is a species of shrew native to the Democratic Republic of Congo. It and its sister species, the hero shrew, ᚤ᚟ᚾᚨᚱ sumreni, are the only mammal species known to have interlocking vertebrae. 67. The team named the shrew after Thor due to the god's association with strength. Swedish melodic death metal band Amon Amarth's 2008 studio album Twilight of the Thunder God is based around Thor's slaying of the serpent Hörmungandr.